Dylan Beard with Clear Salting. I've got Melissa Clark with us today, and we're giving you guys some insights into how BlackLine really helped pave the way for transformation at ExxonMobil and how we were able to really go through some of the successes, the wins, the challenges, and get you guys excited about the upcoming Beyond the Black conference in Las Vegas in early September. Melissa's going to be there. I'm going to be there, and we're really looking forward to meeting you guys in person and continuing this conversation that we're going to start today. So before we get into it, I'll give you guys a little bit of an introduction to myself. I'm a director here at Clear Salting. I've been in a record to report space for a really long time, and really the highlight of my career. I call myself a record to report nerd, and Melissa can certainly attest to that. Been working with the Exxon account for the last 3 years, really helping drive their path forward in the record to report space around technology and overall transformation. Prior to that, worked on a number of other Fortune 500, Fortune 10 clients, and in a prior life was actually an administrator for these types of record to report technologies. So happy to have Melissa here and to share this story with a broader audience. Melissa, if you can give us an intro.
Hi, my name is Melissa Clark. I am currently a transformation project manager at ExxonMobil. My BlackLine experience is implementing the record track for our initial BlackLine implementation. And now I have the full BlackLine into S4 work that's sort of phase 2 for ExxonMobil's journey with BlackLine. Prior to these roles, I've had several roles within the controller's organization, including internal audit, stewardship, planning, you name it. I've been with the company for 18 years, and this is a super exciting part of the journey. I've never seen work quite like this, and I'm excited to see where we go with it.
Well, Melissa, thank you so much for speaking with us and getting folks excited about the conference. The first question I'll ask you is, how did BlackLine get positioned in a way that it got seen as a way to really pave the road for S4 and that journey ahead?
If I take us back to the early part of our transformation journey, we knew several years ago that we were going to need to move our systems landscape from its current, 8+ different ERP systems, which is both a mix of SAP and non-SAP systems, into the new S4 system. As we looked at what that might do to our systems landscape, we realized that we had several very highly customized versions of SAP, as well as several custom-built applications that were helping us facilitate several processes. We knew going into S4 that we did not want to further customize the SAP boxes, and we didn't want to carry over these customized systems. So we started looking for out-of-the-box solutions that would help us facilitate these processes. One that really stood out to us was BlackLine, because not only did it have the automation that we wanted to achieve that would help us on our journey, but we also realized that it had a way to systematically enforce some of the process changes that we wanted to make. I think here specifically thresholds to make sure that we weren't doing lower value work and instead we're concentrating on the higher value items. We also were pleased that BlackLine was able to handle the level of complexity that our organization has. We do something like 10 million intercompany transactions, and we really needed to make sure we had a system that could handle that, and BlackLine was able to, and so that really put them at the forefront of the organizations that we looked at to help us on this first step of our journey.
So you kind of touched on it with the S4 mandate and with that being part of the overall journey, but what else let ExxonMobil know that this was the time for true transformation, true finance transformation?
Yeah, I like how you call it a journey. So we knew, as I mentioned, that we wanted to go into an S4 box. But as we looked at what we would need to get there, we realized it wasn't going to be a jump from our current systems landscape directly into S4. We knew we needed a way to sort of enable that journey, to take a couple of steps first to make sure we were ready to go into S4. We looked at how the BlackLine software worked and what their functionalities were, and we realized, hey, we could use this as a way to jumpstart our journey, if you will, take that first step. And we could use it to see and prove to ourselves we can make our processes fit and out of the box software. We had in the past really anchored on, oh, there's no way we can do something with out of the box. We have to customize everything. Um, Management had very much changed the way they were thinking about how systems work and how our processes would fit with these systems, and said, hey, let's flip the script on this and say, can our processes fit these systems? Because in the long run, we were going to have to fit with S4. And so, we started that journey on the record side with BlackLine and said, okay, with account reconciliations, that's a fairly standard kind of process. Let's prove to ourselves that we can utilize an out of the box software with something like account reconciliations. And so I think that really got us excited to say, let's put everything into one standard software. Let's make sure we have one way of doing account reconciliations, and let's make that process more efficient, more standardized. And in doing that, we were able to free up quite a few FTEs that then helped us build and say, okay, let's use the people's free time to do the value added work and help free up capacity to do the S4 transformation. We knew we wanted to do it with the people we had. We didn't want to have to hire a number of people just for a small short of time, a short amount of time, excuse me, to go through this transformation journey. We wanted to be able to use our system, our process experts who knew how we did things to help us get to the future. But we knew we needed to free up their capacity. So BlackLine also helped us free up their capacity by taking away some of that lower value work, and allowing them to have the time to help us and move into the S4 work.
Absolutely. So you talk about, freeing up their time, and
Mhm.
we oftentimes think about automation. We think about standardizing work, but I know part of the Exxon story was also reducing some duplicative activities that we had built up over the years, but we were able to rationalize those activities first to make sure that we weren't just automating our current process, we were automating an efficient process.
Great call out. And I think that's what we forget oftentimes. As we went through this, as we looked at standardizing activities for account recs specifically, we really spoke with our base organization and we asked them about some of their processes. What were the process steps that happened ahead of an account reconciliation? What were they trying to achieve with the account reconciliation? And as we went through that work, we realized that sometimes in some of these processes, there were several check the checker steps. And, when we asked, why do you do this? A lot of folks said, well, this is just the way we've always done it. And so we worked with these organizations to understand what was the value in each of these checks. Were they really adding an additional level of surety to the process? Or was it really a habit that had somehow formed over the years of doing things the way we've been doing them? And as we had those conversations and pointed out, hey, where in your upline processes are your true controls? Is this check truly a control, or is it, I just feel better doing this? With those conversations, we started to see where we could pull out some of those additional process steps and save people time because we were no longer doing non-value add activities.
Absolutely. So, with the timeline that we executed against, how would you recommend achieving and maintaining momentum with such a complex organization that's so globally spread out, so many different opinions, so much passion within your current state, within your current process? Keeping all that straight and keeping people aligned toward a vision can be really challenging. So, would love to hear your thoughts there.
I think there are several things that really helped us with that. Number one, and this is the one that I think is really key, is we had executive buy-in from the very start. Very high levels of management who said, we really support your BlackLine vision. We support the transformation vision. Let us know what we can do to prepare the organization and keep everybody going. Without that buy-in, we would have faced far more obstacles with people not wanting to change. And so having that buy-in and support from the very top, from the very beginning, and being able to use that messaging as we went out to the organizations to introduce what we planned on doing was key. One of the first things people always ask when you say, "Hey, I'm about to do this project that's going to upend your entire life," is they kind of start looking upwards and saying, where's the support for this? Is this just something someone on the side came up with and we're having to deal with it? But when we could point out and say, hey, our CFO, our CEO fully supports this work, people started thinking, oh, okay, this really is something that's important to the organization. So my support of this is supporting the overall corporate objectives. That was probably the first thing that was key in building momentum. Um, some of the other things that I think really helped were breaking up our implementation into several smaller go lives that happened around the world. Um, it seemed like we almost had one or two going every single month. Our very first one was 4 months after our blueprinting phase was over, which was blazingly fast. And I think a lot of folks, when they saw us coming in and say, "Hey, it's time for go live," they thought, "Well, there's absolutely no way they could do this." But when we came in and we said, "It's time to train. This is what we're doing," and we kind of walked them through it. We gave them overviews of here's why we're doing this change, and here's what you will be doing now. It really became real for folks. And in that first month, people who weren't going live in the system were sitting next to people who were, and they were kind of looking over their shoulder and saying, "Oh, what's that new thing you have?" And as they were working in the system, their peers could see, "Oh, wow, their work is a lot faster. They're spending so much less time on this activity than I have been." And they started saying, when we would work with them to get to their go live, they'd say, "Okay, yeah, just give it to me. I've seen my friend do it." So being able to kind of have those baby steps and get people excited about when am I going to be able to be more efficient really helped us build that momentum.
I love that so much, Melissa. I've spent a lot of time thinking about kind of the fallacy around the word transformation. What you're talking about is iterative steps in the right direction.
Yep.
You have an aligned vision, you know where you're wanting to take the company. A lot of your guys' decision was based in needing to clear the path for S4, but there's a lot of other forward trajectory items in that overall vision for finance and accounting at ExxonMobil, and setting that in clear, consumable steps to
Yep.
make those iterative improvements forward just make it more real. It makes
Yep.
it achievable, and it makes you be able to validate the journey with some of these, I'd call them dissenters, that might not have the same buy-in for change. We really want to be able to speak to that audience, show them why these programs are different and how we can help them achieve a better work-life balance and a better value to the work they're adding to the organization.
Absolutely. And I think the configurability of BlackLine really helps with that because, you know, when we first went with it, we strived for what we called the 80/20 rule. We said, we want to make sure that 80% of the process will go through this without need for any change, recognizing that the 20% is where we were going to have, a little bit more challenge. And on those, we were able to adjust things like thresholds, or hey, okay, we think you would do it this way, but now that we're really in this process with you, it's not working the way we expected it to, we can reconfigure the system. And that flexibility available in BlackLine is huge. In our prior systems, we could not have that flexibility. It was essentially set it and forget it, right? You had to make that choice up front and just live with it for however long that went. But with BlackLine being able to reconfigure, I think people got a lot more comfortable with trying new things. And being able to try new things meant they also built that excitement again, right? Like, oh, if this makes it this much more efficient, how will making this other change make me even more efficient? So it
I
really just
hate
builds on
I
itself.
hate to bring this back to your ERP upgrade again, but I also feel like that was a rewiring for a lot of folks. They were used to hard-coded systems, a lot of which were built up from the ground at ExxonMobil. And this also paved the way for that mindset to go into how should we be thinking about these processes as it relates to S4. We have an opportunity to design our future state ERP, not for the ExxonMobil of the past, but the ExxonMobil of the future. For a podcast with one of my colleagues, Heather Verdon, she recorded that last week, I believe, and it was called "Pausing is Poison." Pausing is poison really kind of speaks to what you're talking about. If we're standing still, if we're pausing initiatives, whether it's AI, our competition, or any other distraction is kind of blazing beside us. And it's that iterative step forward that keeps us on that transformation journey. What kind of challenges did you personally face? And what were the insights that you would tell a couple years ago, Melissa, going into this that would help inform your actions?
Yeah, I think one of the thing that surprised me the most was how tied to our processes our folks were. Even if they didn't like the process, if they thought there was a better way to do it, but they just couldn't figure out how, when it came time to say, hey, we're going to reimagine your process and we're going to change this, the amount of resistance we received, I think, surprised me. I thought there would be a lot more enthusiasm of like, yes, let's change this. What we found was if we sat down with the folks, we saw that it was all based in sort of fear. Change is difficult. It's really hard, especially when you've had these processes in place for, decades, as we have in our organization. And so we would go and meet with our users, our future users, and sit down and talk with them about, hey, how are you feeling about this? What is it about the process that you are so tied to? Is there a specific outcome that comes out of the process that you're worried won't be there anymore? And by meeting with folks at that level and really understanding the base of their fear, we were able to bring them in more constructively. I think one of the greatest learnings we had too was having the base organization, the users themselves or a representative for those users come in and help us configure account reconciliations. That was huge. Because when we showed them, hey, these are the types of templates you can use, and this is how you're doing it today. And if you use this template, it automates this piece or it eliminates the need to do this step. They started getting really excited because it made it more real for them and more tangible of how their process could change for the better. I really kind of wish we'd done that a little bit earlier. It took us a little bit of time. We really just thought people would be excited about the prospect of something newer and out of the box and more automated. But having those one-on-one conversations were really what drove people's desire to change. And so I wish we'd done those a little bit sooner.
Your other comment about the early wins and having your neighbor, utilizing these new technologies, that's really powerful too. So I think that it's almost that continued validation of the team spending the time with me, they're listening to my objections, they're listening to my fears and addressing them alongside seeing other people have their hands and toes in the new process, and the world didn't end and they are seeing them receive some of the benefits. So I think it's just decoupling the past from what the future could be that really needs to trigger that mindset shift, to get folks okay with the change that comes easier to others than some.
Absolutely. I think it's a lot easier and less scary for people when they can see what the future looks like, when they can see that change you're trying to drive them towards. So being able to illustrate that was a key unblocker for us. So once we had, enough information or enough screens to actually show them, that's when we really were able to sort of break through some of those mental barriers that folks had.
Absolutely love the conversation, Melissa, as always. Just a reminder for those on the phone, both Melissa and I, as well as several other of the Exxon team members, will be in the Beyond the Black conference in Las Vegas in September. You can stop by the Clear Salting booth. We can get you hooked up with Melissa to do a more one-on-one breakout around this topic. We can talk about many different ways you can get connected with the Exxon team or the larger Clearsalting BlackLine network while you're at the conference. Thank you so much again, Melissa, for spending the time with us to kind of give people a taste of what's to come with the networking opportunities ahead of them. So thank you.
See you in September.